Derek Vance held up the sheet. Church porch revival, some kids don't want a career. The room laughed. He dropped the sheet at her feet. Come back when your name doesn't sound like a quilting circle. She walked past him onto the stage. The demo had gone viral. At 6:08, a text from his boss. Sign the porch band. Noon. He found her at a diner, sliding a contract across the counter. Imani Reyes didn't touch the contract. She looked at Derek Vance, the man who had laughed at her band's name 12 hours earlier, and asked a question that no one at the label ever expected to hear. To understand how a 19-year-old from East Atlanta turned an audition into a reckoning, you have to start with the name they mocked, Church Porch Revival. The name came from a memory. When Imani Reyes was 8 years old, her grandmother used to sit on the front porch of their house on Clifton Road every Sunday after service, humming old spirituals while the neighbors passed by. That porch was her first stage. The word revival was what her grandmother called music that could pull you out of a hard week and set you back on your feet. So when Imani formed a band at 17 with her cousin Marcus on bass and her best friend Deja on drums, she called it Church Porch Revival. No marketing team, no focus group, just 3 kids from East Atlanta who played like they had something to prove. Derek Vance had been a staff producer at Threshold Records for 6 years and had not discovered a single artist worth signing. He kept his job because he was good at saying no, louder, sharper, faster than anyone else in the room. The label had hemorrhaged $2 million on pop acts that went nowhere, and the president, Elaine Morrison, had started canceling A&R showcases. The 9-volt showcase was the last one she approved, and she made it clear: find something real or close the department. Imani's band had only played 2 live shows before that night. The demo they uploaded to SoundCloud was recorded on a laptop in Marcus's garage using a $40 microphone. The song was called Without a Crown. 3 chords, a bass line that walked like a slow heartbeat, and Imani's voice, raw, unpolished, and so honest it made you want to look away. They posted it at 11 at night on a Thursday. By Friday morning, it had 4,000 plays. By Saturday night, 50,000. The algorithm had caught it, but more than that, people were sharing it with the kind of urgency that comes from hearing something true. But here, what Derek Vance didn't know, he didn't know about the demo. He didn't know that the group text with the label's social media team was blowing up with a single link. He didn't know that Elaine Morrison, jet-lagged in a London hotel room, had clicked that link at 3 in the morning and listened to it 5 times in a row. He only knew that when he walked into the 9-volt showcase that night, he was tired, frustrated, and looking for someone to dismiss. The green room was packed with acts ranging from polished pop trios to rappers with ring lights. Imani's band sat in the corner, quiet. Their clothes were thrifted. Their instrument cases were held together with duct tape. When Derek picked up the sign-up sheet and saw Church Porch Revival, he saw a name that didn't belong, not in his industry, not at his showcase, not in his future. He didn't just mock it, he weaponized it. He turned the room against her before she even opened her mouth. But the thing Derek forgot, the thing the whole room forgot, was that this was still an audition. Imani walked onto that stage, plugged in her guitar, and played the first 3 notes of Without a Crown. The room shifted, not because the sound was perfect, but because it was true. The kind of true that makes you stop scrolling. The kind of true that makes a label president in London type an all-caps text at dawn. At 6:08 the next morning, Derek Vance was jolted awake by his phone. The text from Elaine Morrison read, "Derek, I need you to sign that girl with the porch band. Whatever she wants. Her demo is the only thing this label has done right in 6 months. You have until noon." He stared at the screen. Then he looked at the sign-up sheet on his nightstand, the one he'd held up for the room to laugh at, and felt his stomach drop. He pulled into the diner parking lot at 11:47, the contract folder sitting on the passenger seat like a live grenade. The sign-up sheet was still inside it, the same one he'd held up in the green room 12 hours earlier, the same one he'd dropped at Imani Reyes' feet. He should have thrown it away. He hadn't. He walked inside, spotted her at the counter with a glass of sweet tea, and set the contract beside it. His hand was not steady. "You need to sign this," he said. She didn't look at the folder. She didn't look at him. She just stirred her tea with a straw and asked, quiet and calm, "Did you even listen to the demo before you laughed at us? Or did you just decide we weren't worth it?" He opened his mouth. Nothing came, because the answer was the second one and they both knew it. The waitress filled her coffee cup 2 tables away, and the silence stretched long enough to become a verdict. What Derek didn't know yet was that, while he was sleeping off the showcase, the demo had not just gone viral, it had ignited a bidding war. 3 independent labels had already reached out to Imani's email address, the one she'd listed on SoundCloud. One of them, a small Atlanta-based imprint called Cypress Row, had offered her a development deal at 1 in the morning with no audition, no showcase, just a direct message. "Your voice is the real thing. Name your terms." Another, a Nashville songwriter collective, had offered to fly her out that weekend. And a fourth entity, a senior A&R executive from a major label who had seen the demo shared by a friend, was currently on a flight from Los Angeles to Atlanta, hopping to intercept her before Threshold locked it down. Imani had read every message. She had not responded to any of them. She was sitting in that diner not because she needed a contract, but because she wanted to see if the man who mocked her church, her grandmother, and her band's name would be able to say the word sorry out loud without being forced. He couldn't. Not yet. Instead, he tried to regain control. "Let's not get emotional about last night," he said, his voice slipping into the weary, entitled tone of a man who had never been told no by anyone he respected. "The industry is tough. I was testing your resilience. Now the label wants you, and that's what matters." She turned her head slowly. Her eyes were the kind of steady that only forms when you've been underestimated your whole life. "You called my band a quilting circle. You held my name up so 400 people could laugh. That wasn't a test. That was cruelty. And you still haven't listened to the song, have you? The song? Without a Crown." It was about her grandmother, the woman who raised her after her mother died of a stroke when Imani was 12. The lyrics spoke of a woman who had cleaned houses for 30 years, who never got a crown from the world but who wore one anyway because she knew who she was. The band's name wasn't a joke. It was a monument, and Derek Vance had stepped on it without ever hearing a single note. He tried again. He pushed the contract closer. "I have a noon deadline. My boss, Elaine Morrison, is not a patient woman. If we don't close this, I lose my job. You want that on your conscience." She almost laughed. "You made 400 people laugh at an 11-year-old girl's dress in another audition 3 years ago." This was a detail that had surfaced online that morning, unearthed by a blogger who had tracked Derek Vance's pattern of cruelty at showcases. A clip from a previous event where he mocked a child's stutter. It was rising to the surface now, along with the demo's play count, which had just crossed 700,000. The two stories were fusing into a single narrative: the arrogant industry gatekeeper versus the talent he tried to crush, and the talent was winning. At 11:53, Derek's phone buzzed again. Elaine Morrison. He swiped it open. Her voice was ice. "She hasn't signed, has she?" It was not a question. "You have 7 minutes. If she walks, you walk, and I'll make sure every label in this city knows why." He set the phone down. For the first time, genuine fear flickered across his face. Imani saw it. She leaned back in her booth. "I'll sign," she said. Relief flooded his features. Then she added, "on one condition. You will walk into that diner, no, you will walk out onto the parking lot right now and onto a live broadcast that my cousin Marcus is setting up on his phone, and you will apologize. Not a PR statement. Not a scripted note. You will look into the camera and tell the world exactly what you did, why it was wrong, and why you don't deserve to keep your job if you can't learn from it." The diner went silent. The waitress stopped wiping the counter. Derek Vance stared at her. "You're serious," she nodded. "You have until noon, that's your deadline." He looked at the contract, at the folder, at the sign-up sheet still inside. He thought about his job, his mortgage, his reputation. He thought about the way he'd felt when he held up that sheet and the whole room laughed. And he thought about the sound of Imani's voice when she sang about her grandmother, a sound he had finally heard on the drive over when he'd pulled up the demo on his phone in a panic, and something in his chest had cracked open. He stood up. He walked out of the diner. Marcus was already there, phone in hand, streaming live to 12,000 viewers who had been following the drama since dawn. Derek Vance faced the lens, and for the first time in his career, he prepared to tell the truth. But he didn't get the chance, because at that exact moment, a black SUV pulled into the lot and out stepped Elaine Morrison herself, having flown back from London on a red-eye the moment she sent the text. She walked past Derek without a glance, entered the diner, and sat down across from Imani. "Ms. Reyes," she said, "I'm not here to make my producer apologize. I'm here to ask you what you need to be heard. And if it's his job, it's his job. But I think you and I both know this is about something bigger." She opened her own folder, and inside was a contract rewritten by her legal team that morning, one that gave Imani full creative control, final say over her name, her image, her stories, and a guaranteed minimum marketing spend that no new artist in Threshold's history had ever received. "I listened," Elaine said. "I listened 5 times. Now let's talk about what a real partnership looks like." Derek stood outside, frozen on camera, as everything he thought he controlled slipped away. Derek stood outside the diner, the phone still broadcasting to 14,000 viewers who watched his jaw tense and his eyes flick toward the diner door. Inside, Elaine Morrison sat across from Imani Reyes, the contract she had rewritten that morning open on the sticky laminate tabletop. "Full creative control," Elaine said. "Your name stays. Your stories stay. We invest in a church porch revival EP, recorded wherever you want with whatever team you choose. Marketing minimum 200,000, and we clear my producer out of your path permanently if that's what you need." Imani didn't reach for the pen. She looked at Elaine with the same steady calm she'd held all morning. "What about the others?" Elaine paused. "Others. The other artists Derek Vance humiliated before me. The ones who didn't have a demo that went viral, who didn't have a label president on a red-eye flight. What happens to their music?" It was the question the entire industry had been avoiding for 6 years, and it was now being asked live to the head of a major label by a 19-year-old with a sweet tea and a SoundCloud account, while a man who had once mocked grandma's quilting circles stood outside, his career dissolving frame by frame in the phone camera of her cousin Marcus. The stream's comment section erupted. People began posting names, artists who had gone quiet, who had been laughed off stages by Derek Vance and never performed again. A woman named Tasha Wilkes from Birmingham, who had been a gospel prodigy until Derek told her she had too much church and not enough crossover, messaged from a dormant account. "He did it to me in 2018. I never sang in public again." The screen was flooded with screenshots of old showcase clips, each one showing Derek leaning back, smirking, waving a hand in dismissal. The pattern was undeniable. This wasn't one bad night, it was a system. Elaine set her hands flat on the table. She had built a career navigating crises, but this was different. The cameras were not hers. The narrative was not hers. She could lose Imani to any of the 3 other offers, or worse, she could become the face of the machine that broke these voices. Made a choice. "Ms. Reyes, if you sign with us, Threshold will open a review of every artist dismissed by Derek Vance over the past 6 years. We will fund a development program for 5 of those artists with no obligation to sign, just support. And we'll make the findings public, no more gatekeeping in the dark." Imani glanced at her phone. Marcus had the camera pointed at the diner window. She could see the reflection of the stream's viewer count, 31,000 now, climbing. She stood up. "Come outside. The world needs to hear this from you on the record." The parking lot had become a stage. Derek Vance stood at the edge of the asphalt, his collar damp with sweat, while Marcus turned the phone toward him and Elaine. Imani walked up and stood beside Derek, not to comfort him, but to make sure he was seen. The man who had held up her band's name as a punchline, now standing beside the woman whose voice had made a label president cross an ocean. Elaine looked into the lens. Effective immediately, Derek Vance is removed from all A&R responsibilities. Threshold Records will investigate the culture that allowed mockery to substitute for merit. And we will start by signing Imani Reyes and Church Porch Revival on terms that respect not just their talent but their dignity. Derek's mouth opened. "Elaine, please, I can. The time for that was 10 years ago, Derek. Or 10 seconds before you laughed at the wrong girl." The stream chat exploded. Tasha Wilkes posted a video from her living room, tears streaming, saying, "Maybe now someone will hear my song." The hashtag Church Porch Revival trended in 3 minutes. Media outlets called it the Diner Reckoning. And Imani Reyes, standing in the morning sun, finally took the pen from Elaine and signed her name, not because she was desperate, but because her leverage had just rewritten the rules for everyone waiting behind her. But the biggest twist was yet to come. Because as the stream ended and the black SUV pulled away, Marcus opened an email on his phone that had been sitting unread since 6 that morning. It was from an artist Derek had dismissed 5 years ago, a jazz singer named Elijah Cross who had died by suicide 18 months after being told he didn't have the look. His family had been watching the stream. They wanted to talk. And that conversation, when it happened, would turn a corporate victory into a national movement about who gets to survive the music industry's cruelty and whose voices get buried before they ever reach a stage. The email from Elijah Cross's family changed everything. 2 days after the Diner stream, Imani and Elaine sat in the living room of a small house in Stone Mountain, Georgia, across from Elijah's mother, Ruth, and his younger brother, Caleb. On the coffee table between them sat a laptop with 16 unreleased tracks, songs Elijah had recorded in his bedroom, soulful jazz compositions that had never been heard outside these walls. Ruth's hands shook as she spoke. He came home from that showcase and never picked up his saxophone again. He said, "Mama, if the people who decide what music matters think I don't have the look, then maybe I don't have anything." She pressed play. The room filled with a voice so rich and aching it silenced everything else. Imani closed her eyes. When the song ended, she said, "He did have something. He had everything, and we're going to make sure everyone knows it." Threshold Records launched the Elijah Cross Legacy Project within 30 days. All 16 tracks were mastered and released as a posthumous album, with full royalties directed to a mental health foundation for artists founded in his name. The album debuted at number 7 on the jazz charts. Music critics called it a lost masterpiece, but more importantly, it opened a door. 37 other artists who had been dismissed, mocked, or silenced by industry gatekeepers came forward. Threshold's review panel, which included Imani as a paid consultant, discovered a pattern of cruelty stretching back a decade, not just from Derek Vance, but from a culture that rewarded dismissal over discovery. 4 senior A&R executives were fired. 6 regional showcase programs were restructured to include blind auditions, where artists performed behind a screen, judged solely on sound. Derek Vance was not just removed from his role. The public reckoning on that parking lot stream had been viewed 2 million times by the end of the week. He issued a video apology from his personal account, unscripted and trembling, admitting he had destroyed careers for sport. The apology was met with skepticism, but one person accepted it, Tasha Wilkes, the gospel singer from Birmingham. She posted a response, "I don't forgive you for you. I forgive you so I can sing again." Tasha performed at a local church the following Sunday for the first time in 6 years. The video of her performance was shared by Church Porch Revival. It racked up 800,000 views. Derek enrolled in therapy and began volunteering at a youth music program in South Atlanta. Imani Reyes and Church Porch Revival recorded their debut EP, Without a Crown, in Marcus's garage on the same $40 microphone that had captured the original demo. Raymond Cole, the legendary producer who had flown in to mentor her, insisted on keeping the raw texture. "The world doesn't need another polished product," he said. "It needs the truth." The EP dropped on a Friday in late summer. By Monday, the title track had 5 million streams. The song about her grandmother, the one Derek had never heard before he laughed, was now being played on radio stations in 40 countries. The music video, shot on the actual church porch where Imani's grandmother had hummed spirituals, featured the woman herself, 82 years old, sitting in a rocking chair, smiling through tears. 6 months after the Diner, Imani stood on the stage of the Fox Theater in Atlanta, accepting the Horizon Award for Best New Artist. The audience rose before she even reached the microphone. She wore a dress her grandmother had sewn from deep blue fabric, the same color as the porch ceiling back home. She leaned into the microphone and said, "This is for everyone who was told their name was wrong, their voice was wrong, their story was wrong." Your name is a monument, your voice is a revival. Don't let anyone take it from you. Backstage, a message arrived from Ruth Cross. It read simply, Elijah is smiling. And one more thing happened, something nobody saw coming. At the after party, a young production assistant who had worked under Derek Vance approached Imani with a folder. Inside was a photograph from the 9-volt showcase, the sign-up sheet Derek had held up for the room to mock. Someone had framed it. At the bottom, Derek had written in Sharpie, I was wrong, thank you for not quitting. He had sent it through the assistant, too ashamed to deliver it himself. Imani looked at it for a long moment. Then she turned it around and wrote on the back, Revival starts when the gatekeepers open the door. Now hold it open for the next one. She hung the frame in the lobby of the Threshold Records headquarters, where it still hangs today, a reminder that framed sign-up sheet still hangs in the lobby. Artists walk past it every day on their way to meetings that will decide their futures, and every one of them knows the story. But the story isn't really about a contract, or a label president, or even the man who learned too late that cruelty has a cost. It's about a 19-year-old who looked at a room full of laughter and decided her grandmother's porch was bigger than their mockery. She didn't fight to prove them wrong. She just kept singing until the room had no choice but to change. Somewhere right now, there's a kid staring at a sign-up sheet, or a comment section, or a mirror being told their name is too weird, their voice is too raw, their dream is too big. They've been given the laughter. They're waiting for permission to quit. Imani Reyes didn't give them permission. She gave them a precedent. She proved that the gatekeepers don't get the final word. The music does. So drop it in the comments. What's the thing someone told you to change about yourself that you now realize was never broken? I read every single one. And if this story moved something in you, send it to one person who needs to hear it tonight. Because the next church porch revival is already out there, humming on a porch, waiting for the door to open. If you're not subscribed yet, stay close. There's another story coming next week that I honestly cannot wait to tell you. Until then, keep singing in the key of your own truth. The room will catch up.